Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's time once again for Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd, product guy at Data.World, joined by Juan Cicada. Hey, Juan.
Hey, Tim, it is always a pleasure to take a break in your day and just let's go chat about data and hopefully have a nice, refreshing drink. And today I am super excited to have the one and only Barr Moses, CEO and co-founder of Monte Carlo. And if you don't know who Barr is, that means that you've been living underneath a rock in this data world. Barr, it is fantastic to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so great to be on the podcast with you all. This is so fun. I like the honest, no BS shirt.
Well, you will get one soon. So welcome to the club of the honest, no BS t-shirt holders, which are friends and former guests of the podcast. So
love it.
Well, what are we drinking and what are we toasting for today?
I'm drinking coconut water, toasting for data and AI, observability. How about that? Exciting future?
It is definitely an exciting future.
Exciting time and exciting future. How about that?
All right. Tim, how about you?
Hey. I am drinking a dark and stormy today, and I'm doing it with just a different rum than usual. It's a plantation black cask rum, so pretty good.
I feel that you're getting into rums. That's a brand new bottle right there. I'm actually also on the rum. Like we did not coordinate on this. I put some rum and some bitters, and actually I like my sparkling water. So this is a lemon lime Waterloo sparkling water, and I just it's like a spicy rum, but I don't like those spicy rums. So this is a bitter spicy one. So, anyways, cheers to data and AI and observability. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
All right, we got a lot to unpack, so let's kick it off. Let's just jump in. Honest, no BS. What do we mean by AI observability now?
Great question. How much time you got? Got a long answer.
Let's go.
So first of all, I think just calling it AI observability is doing it injustice. I think it should be data and AI observability. I'll start by that. Because I think something interesting is happening in the market. I think everything data is becoming data and AI. So you have data leaders, data platform teams, data governance teams, and they're all expanding their remit to become data and AI. And I think, we sort of have a history as an industry to kind of think about things in silos and sort of one-offs. And I actually think the power of observability, and just kind of to give folks a little bit of background on what observability even means. So observability is the ability to understand and estimate the health of a system based on its outputs. Now, that's like something that's like super common in engineering and security and, really sort of best practice for folks most familiar. Engineering teams build with solutions like App Dynamics, Datadog, New Relic. You would never think to build sort of to launch a website without sort of having proper kind of telemetry, if you will, on it. The same thing holds for data and AI products. Guess what? We can't be shipping data and AI products and kind of like hoping that they're accurate or sort of like hoping that they're going to be reliable. In fact, everything that we're seeing in the last few months, last few years is that folks who are quick to ship things without sort of observability are hit with impact. Happy to talk through a couple of examples. One of the most, I'll actually give one example. My favorite example is someone Googled, what should I do when cheese is slipping off my pizza? And Google responded, oh, you should just use organic super glue to put the cheese back on your pizza. I think it like went viral on X or something. Now, that's an example where, even if like the prompt was perfect, the context was perfect, like, nothing in sort of the system was off, you can still have a model output that's totally inappropriate, totally like not fit for purpose, right? And so that's a good example of like AI going wrong. And maybe Google can get away with it given their brand, but most organizations can't afford to, launch an AI application or an AI product and kind of hope that the output will be reliable. Just, to kind of share a couple more examples for why this matters. Some Chevy Tahoe was selling cars online, and one user convinced the chatbot to sell the car for $1. I commend the user for being able to make that, to make that happen for them. But, probably like a pretty clever hack to do that. But, the implications for what happens when you ship AI products that are based on bad data, or, that have an output that causes unintended consequences are pretty remarkable. So long story short, observability is sort of the set of best practices, methodologies, tools, solutions, operational processes to make sure that those things don't happen. That, data and AI teams are able to ship AI products in a way that generates confidence, and that they can actually drive an impact and ROI to their business. Instead of worrying about their products, suggesting to use organic superglue for your pizza. Probably not the best suggestion.
All right, so Tim and I are back channeling right now, and we have so much stuff to go over.
Awesome.
All right. Okay. So first thing I'm going to bring up is, so first of all, I agree with everything you say. So I think I would expect.
That's too bad. You should devil advocate.
No, hold on. I'm setting the premise that we're starting off with an agreement, but now let's figure out how much of what you're saying falls underneath the umbrella, the term of observability, versus other terms that we're hearing, which is guardrails. And then that brings up the point of like, who is supposed to be doing this type of work, right? You got data teams and anyways, you can see the next topic when I get into like the team structure and stuff, but observability, guardrails, throw in governance in there, so forth. So you go and let's see how much we end up now agreeing or not.
Yeah, great question. So first, I'll start by saying, like, let's define guardrails. So, Juan, when you mean guardrails, what do you mean? Like, what? I think it's like
Well, I think at some point at a super high level, it is like, am I getting an appropriate type of or expected output or not? Right. So, talking about putting super glue and cheese, because like that's it's unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Selling something for $1 that's completely
maybe
unexpected.
Even going
right?
so far as to enforce good responses, right?
Yeah. So whatever good mean, right, brings up the question, what does good mean and so forth. But I think there is some sort of kind of like obvious of like what should be considered or not should be considered response. So I think that's what I would call it. But by the way, that's my off the cuff answer here. And good question, which is like, I don't know what the proper definition of guardrails is.
Great question. And I think you gave a couple examples of what sort of the market is perceived as guardrails. And by the way, I think guardrails are super important. I'll give another example that I think is very pertinent. Is the type of kind of like the type of data that folks have access when interacting with a chatbot, for example. So if I'm asking a question and then I get access to data that I shouldn't get access to, there probably should be a guardrail in place that says, do not let Barr Moses ask a question about, X data that you should not get access to, for example. So while the response could be accurate and relevant, there are different, security or privacy reasons for why I shouldn't have access to that data, for example, right? I sort of heard, I'm sure you have like plenty of horror stories about people building internal chatbot for the company, internal sort of like knowledge-based Q&A type agents, only to have employees ask questions and get access to confidential data that's, either proprietary to customers or internal data that, employees shouldn't have access to, as an example. So I definitely think, the concept of guardrails is very important. And in that sense, sort of the concept of evals, I'll maybe just to kind of like spice this up a little bit, I'll add something that I think is super interesting. I was just chatting with the head of AI at a Fortune 50 company last week. And, he shared with me, sort of asking him, you all have like agents in the wild in production. What do you guys do to make sure that the responses are appropriate or fit for purpose? And he was basically saying, like, we have, people sort of manually sifting through hundreds of responses every single day. And so like, signaling thumbs up, thumbs down. And, the human in the loop matters. Like the role of human in the loop is critical today. And I don't think that's going away in any sense, at least not yet. In fact, there's various ways to evaluate LLM responses. You can use, LLM as a judge, right? Obviously, sort of like having people actually manually evaluate is another way. But I think that's what's interesting to me about that is, 5 to 7 years ago, when I was asking data leaders, what are you doing to make sure that your reports are accurate? They would tell me, oh, we have, a bunch of team members looking at the data to make sure that it's accurate. And that was mind blowing to me as well. Like, why don't we have automated solutions for that? And I think similarly today, it's like, why don't we have automated solutions to that? And I think the answer is we're still going to have humans in the loop for a while longer. I think that, technology is obviously nascent and there's various reasons, but, that's still going to persist. Now, maybe going back to your question about like, what does observability mean in this context as it relates to guardrails? I think when we think about observability, there's sort of like 3 core parts, if you will. There's, maybe taking a step back, folks are building sort of a data and AI estate, right? And that data and AI estate includes, data sources, data warehouses, data lake houses, ETL solutions. On the AI side, it could include the agent itself, prompt, RAG pipelines. It can include a vector database, right? There's a lot of technology that kind of goes into building an AI application. Things can break anywhere in that estate, right? And so again, I think it's sort of we can think about the model output as sort of a single point of failure, and that's certainly something that could happen, but you could have problems all along data and AI estate. And so when we think about sort of what are the root causes for unreliable data and AI applications, we actually sort of break it down into 4 core reasons, or 4 core root causes for why those issues can happen. One of them is the model response can just be not fit for purpose. So again, you can have the perfect context, the perfect prompt, but still, get a bad response. Another thing that could happen is has nothing to do with the model output, but you could actually have a problem with data source. So oftentimes people are sort of building, again, it could be RAG, and for folks who have been building with this, like using your proprietary data as one of the core components of actually building strong AI solutions. So I think, in the last couple of years, there's this battle of the giants, if you will, with, what's the latest and greatest model. And, folks the results are changing by the minute. And so, what a lot of sort of enterprise customers that we speak with, might change, like there's no switching costs essentially. So they might be changing their model like every month or every quarter or so. And you're sort of seeing this battle, between OpenAI and Anthropic and open source, closed source, right? With Meta, et cetera. But I think one of the lessons, that we're seeing in the last couple of years, and I think DeepSeek, so for folks who don't know, DeepSeek is sort of, is a model that was significantly cheaper, with similar or better performance. And so in all of those instances, it basically shows us that everyone can have access to the latest and greatest model. And so whatever company you are, with just, the click of a couple of buttons, within a couple of seconds, you can get, sort of API keys and get access to the latest and greatest model. And so in that world, what is your differentiator? Like if I'm a retail company, or if I'm a CPG company, if I'm a fintech company, how do I differentiate between what I'm building and what someone else is building? And the way to differentiate is with your enterprise data. So if I have data about Tim or about Juan, I can build a better AI product because I have that data. Because me and my 10 other competitors all have access to the latest and greatest model. And so in that world, your enterprise proprietary data matters significantly, because then I can build AI products that actually, make recommendations that are more relevant to you in particular. And in that world, if the data that I'm using, for example, if I'm using data about Tim that's based on Juan, or Juan's data based on Tim, obviously the result will not be good. And so, I'm sort of going back to the question of like, what are the root cause of unreliable AI applications? The first we said is model output. The second is data. So the data can be wrong. It can literally be based on wrong data. The third is there could be a code change somewhere that broke something. It could be like the code in the agent itself. Someone made a change, or a code in transformation somewhere. And the third thing is there could be a system failure. And by that, I mean, sort of the infrastructure that's running all the jobs. 100% of systems fail at some point. And so, there could be some job that just didn't get completed. And so all of those things can contribute to the application. Guardrails matter, and you need to make sure that the output, is sort of adheres to what you define. But in order to actually build really reliable applications, I think it's necessary but not sufficient, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is really cool how you're kind of identifying these 4 key causes, and actually this connects a lot to. I saw a post that you put on the Monte Carlo blog that talked about the 4 ways that data and AI break, and you mentioned in that data, systems, code, and model, and kind of playing off of these 4 reasons here. Like where obviously, Monte Carlo, for example, started as data observability. And I think you were really, at the forefront of really kind of the thought leadership around what data observability needs to be. Obviously, now we're looking at all 4 of these areas. How do you observe across all these things, right? And are there areas where it's a little more obvious how you do observability? Versus are there areas, for example, model observability, right? Like, are there areas that are a little more like, we don't know yet. Like, we don't exactly know what the best practices are right now.
And to follow up on this, last year I went for the first time to the MLOps conference, and it was for me really eye-opening to see kind of two different. I come from the data world. When I go to all the data conferences and we use all these words, and I look to the MLOps conferences and they're using very different words. Well, for example, they use guardrails over here, and I think a lot of that stuff will use governance on that side. But I look at this and like, wow, there's a lot of overlap. And I'm not saying that we're like, oh, this should really be just one tool that does both. I don't know. Maybe there should be. Maybe there shouldn't be. Like, so what are the stuff kind of to add to Tim's here is like, what are things that we're like seeing in different worlds that they are overlapping and this is just kind of redundant, or things that it makes sense to keep them separate, and like, because there's this whole different dynamics of like different industries and cultures and people and so forth. But anyway,
yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel what you're talking about, and I think one of the things that contributing to that is sort of this muddying of like titles and roles of teams that AI is creating. So if you look at like a average enterprise organization, like who's actually building with AI, you'd find variety in that. I think it started out from like a small team under like a SWAT team under the CTO. Then organizations moved to like, everyone can build with AI, kind of like democracy and sort of access across, and with no like centralized governance and enterprise. They're like, okay, we'll build that center of excellence later. Like this year is the year of innovation. And now,
but by the way, sorry, quick.
Yeah.
Like, we've been seeing this story with data, right? Everybody can be data. Everybody can democratize data. Now it's democratize AI. You're like, anyway,
exactly. No, that's exactly right. And then, I think the other shift that's happening is like, if you look at who's building AI today, it's actually data teams and engineering teams and data. And by data teams, I really mean data science, AI researchers, ML engineers, and data engineers building alongside engineering teams. So there's these sort of like hybrid teams building together, which is why I think it's creating a little bit of confusion of like, what should we be doing? I think more than anything, what I'm hearing from, again, I speak to like 10 to 15 sort of customers and sort of like data leaders a week. By and large, I think there's a couple of things that are driving customers. First of all, I definitely think there's a risk for folks not thinking about AI. Like I think as a leader today, you are under tremendous pressure to deliver. I'll just give you guys an anecdote. We did this survey, a couple hundred data leaders. Not a single data leader from our survey admitted to not be building with AI. Like 100% are building with AI in production today. Like there's very few questions in the survey that you will ask that you will get 100% compliance. We also got that I think 97% of them actually are building in production. However, only 1 out of 3 leaders think their data is ready for AI. Similarly, think their organization is ready for AI.
That sounds like actually a high number in my opinion, but But no, I get it. The
No
whole point,
comment?
no, the whole point is like it's far from being ready here.
Exactly. I agree with you. And I actually think there's more behind that. Like, it's not only that our data isn't ready, our organization isn't ready, our team isn't there. Like, there's a lot of layers to having our data being ready, whatever that means, right? So I think there's a lot of questions. And so in general, to answer your question, I think there's a lot more that people are trying to figure out. There's a lot more questions and answers right now. And so I think the core questions that people are asking themselves now are, how do I get AI ready? How do I get my data into a state of being AI ready? And guess what? It does include having your data being governed and having your data, knowing what data you have, having the foundations, right? Having a catalog, whatever it is, like making sure that you understand where your data is, what you're using, so that you are using the right data sets when appropriate. But I digress. back to your question. I think you were asking, like, what should be like one solution versus other. Across the board, again, what I see sort of customers solving for is like, one, they need to build with AI. They also not only need to build with AI in products, but they also need to AI-ify their own operations. What do I mean by that? I mean that, there are a lot of organizations where basically they have this mandate where every single team needs to become AI-based, like across the board, every single business unit. I also see organizations, really large, like Fortune 500 organizations, where they have like 60% of our IT processes need to become AI-ified by the end of this year, right? That's a massive transformation for an organization to drive. And so then I think the question becomes, and I can talk about this a little bit, it's a separate topic, but like, how do you do data quality, data observability, data and AI observability in a AI-based way? So how can AI make observability better? That's a whole other topic, but I think organizations are really under pressure to use AI everywhere. And I do think that this trend of vendor consolidation that we're seeing in the last 4 or 5 years will and should continue. I don't think that point solutions make sense. So for example, I think the topic of unstructured data is very hot right now, right? And by unstructured data, it's like, PDFs, audio files, et cetera, that folks are, images, right? That folks are sort of starting to use more and more in this world of AI. And so the question becomes like, how do I do observability or quality for unstructured data? Unstructured data is a technical term or a technical, asset. It's not a customer pain point. And so you should, people confuse those. And so we should start with the customer pain point and work backwards off of that. And so I think if you're looking for a different solution for your structured data versus your unstructured data, there could be a problem with that. I actually think a strong approach would be a holistic approach, one that starts with my pain and my problem and sort of works backward from that. So it was a long answer, but
this what you just said is so key, so important, because this is the issue with all technologists. We're all followers. Like, we love technology. Want to go start? Like, did this thing. This is so cool, and we do this bottoms up. And we were like, I love how you described it. Right, the unstructured, just a technical assets. The customer doesn't probably even know what the fuck that is and what the difference is. Whatever. Like, they just like that's what you should be focusing on. And I think. So I think kind of what I've been listening right now, kind of in the market and going to conferences and talking to people, is that sooner than later, we're going to have this merger of the data tools and the AI tools, which effectively the current AI tools in the market are more machine learning and I think generative AI is coming around and kind of, I think is going to be that way of it's a forcing function to start integrating more. So I'm really excited about how, going back to how you brought this up, it's like, it's not really AI observability, it's data and AI observability altogether. So yes, we're all
yeah.
Like, where do we disagree? I don't know. Do we agree here too much? I don't know.
No, but but I think that's important. It's very easy to fall into that trap of like, oh, let me like jump onto like, some shiny object, let that be unstructured data or whatever it is. But actually, if you go back to first principles, building reliable applications, whatever those may be, I think that's how we should think about sort of what's guiding us, and that's how we think about sort of systems building. And if you actually, again, if you look at what are the main causes for AI applications to fail, it's not just the model itself. And obviously, you can talk about like data, model drift, and sort of all those things. But I think a lack of a holistic solution that looks at data, systems, code, and model responses would be a failure.
Yeah.
Tim,
No,
to you.
just so obviously you want to take a holistic approach here, and I like that you said a strong approach is a holistic approach, one that starts with the customer's problem. How are you seeing teams and organizations try to approach this in a holistic way? Like, do you see teams retooling or trying to build new skills? Do you see them bringing new people in? I guess what is the human component and the organizational component that you're seeing as people start to shift their mindset from data observability to data and AI observability?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll say that, there's a variety of different things that we're seeing. First of all, I'll just say, I think this is like a great moment in time for like the entire data and AI industry. Like, I think that from a human perspective, when we started the company about 5 years ago, I was like, man, like the data industry is like so hot and so fun. Like, this is going to be so awesome. And then like fast forward now, you're like, holy shit, this thing like really became pretty fucking awesome, right?
To another level, right?
You thought it was fun 5 years ago? Like, talk now, and that fun kind of factor.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly. Like in my wildest dream, I couldn't, forecast or sort of project how insane this has become, right? Like, again, I think this is like the coolest party to be in. So from a human perspective, like what an exciting moment in time in history. What an exciting time to be alive. What an exciting time to be helping data teams, to be building with data and AI, right? Like, I think that's like, I'm just personally super excited about it. That's like, first of all. And I'm also going to say, I think with, major transformations that we've seen, like let's take the internet. I think, there was this huge anticipation for very quick change, but actually real change took 10 to 20 years to really come about. And I think the same here when people talk about like AGI and sort of things like that. Like, yes, there's been this massive change in the last, couple of years, but I do think that, on very, I think this will transform how we live and how we work and how we interact. But I think it'll take 10 to 20 years for that to really, really materialize. I think one of the sort of interesting shifts that I have from, sort of working in the observability space is observability always follows infrastructure by a few years. And so we saw that with engineering. So, engineering teams have been building, obviously, software engineering has been around for like 30 years or so. The rise of sort of New Relic and App Dynamics and Datadog was sort of, when sort of engineering teams were well established. Then we saw this with data teams. So, Monte Carlo started right around the time when Snowflake and Databricks and other sort of, data infrastructure companies were really sort of starting to take off. I think we're seeing the same thing with AI solutions. So like there's really sort of foundational AI infrastructure that's been built in the last few years, starting with NVIDIA, moving on with OpenAI and many others. And I do think that as enterprises take those foundations and sort of infrastructure and actually build with AI, then observability will follow that. And so all of this is to say, I think we are in the early innings of AI. This is probably obvious, and also in the early innings of observability for data and AI overall. And I think from a human component, there's this great excitement for data and AI teams to be building. I think there's more and more teams and people who are involved. There's obviously, different budgets. So sort of like a different budget cycle for data and AI teams in this instance. I think people right now are seeing most of the, call it leverage or benefits of AI in areas like support teams, legal teams, operations teams. There's a lot sort of on the more back office that I think folks are seeing. Anything that has to do with sort of data entry, data processing, et cetera. That's at least what, kind of our customers tell us in terms of kind of the impact and ROI that folks are having. I am seeing enterprise leaders starting to try to quantify, what percentage, sort of savings or cost reductions are able to drive based on AI. And so, just chatting with someone who mentioned they were able to attribute about $90 million in cost reduction thanks to AI, mostly in terms of like automating processes, and would like to double that next year. So I think a lot of sort of what folks are asking themselves, like, what are the right goals? What are right sort of OKRs or KPIs that we should be doing? That's sort of I want to say the next phase. So really, the first phase is sort of research, like what can we do with this thing? What sort of agent should we deploy? How can we actually, drive impact for our customers? And then forward based on that, like what should be a good outcome for us?
So it seems that we're, not surprisingly, obviously very early to figure out what this is. Like, I like what you just said, like we don't even know what the right goals or OKRs around this stuff is. So pointed question here. If companies are large enough that they actually have a data team and they have an ML team or AI team and stuff, do you see this melding becoming like merging, or will they continue being separate, or what is the trend that you're seeing? What do you think should actually happen, and what are the nuances behind that?
I definitely think that the sort of like future model or the operating model is data and AI engineers building side by side with software engineering, for a few reasons. First of all, data and AI engineering teams have like capabilities that are specialized to a certain degree. And I don't think data pipelines are going away anytime soon. People are still like, processing, transforming data, aggregating it, building whatever you want to call it, right? It could be fine tuning, whatever you want it. Like there's still going to be data. And so I don't think engineers are taking over that. I don't think anyone else is taking over that. I still think that's going to be the case. And I think there is value that an engineering team has in terms of actually building applications in production. And so my, hypothesis, if you will, or my prediction is that it'll be data and AI teams alongside engineering teams building.
So let me dive more into this, because this is a discussion I've been having more with folks, and I believe that there's actually at least two different ways of seeing this. So I agree that if the data engineers should be focusing more with the software engineering, assuming you are in an organization who builds software. That's the whole kind of shift left and stuff. But if I am an organization that I sell cans of water, I don't build software. I just go buy software. I use that stuff. So there is no software. I have zero software engineers, or almost nothing, right? But I do have data engineers who are doing things with my data and transforming for analytics and stuff. And I may want to go use AI for some things and stuff. So that's a distinction. This is what I actually push back on. The whole thing is like there's not just one world of data and software engineering. There is one type of world, but there's another one world. There's zero software engineering. So, but there are people still want to bring in AI to make their operations more efficient, and that's still going to go happen. So there are still going to be wanting in their analytics team. They're going to bring in ML models to go do better pricing and stuff like that. Are they building software to go do that type of stuff? I don't know. I don't think you would call that software building, but then they're bringing all this. There's still AI there, even if you're not building software. So, anyways, first of all, I see this distinction. I'm curious to know how you see this distinction. One, because there was like a big LinkedIn thread I was having with Joe Reese a long time ago about this stuff. But then also in that spirit, if you have these data, and we call it data analytics, right? And then but then there's part of the analytics is ML and AI and that stuff. Is like, is this all going to be like one thing in addition to like data engineering pushing with software? And this one, did that all make sense? Because I feel I was ranting more. So.
No, I mean, I respect the rant. I get it. I think it's interesting. I think today there's this, I think what you're drawing, maybe to make sure I kind of recapping what I think you're saying. Today, there's like almost three different buckets. There's like internal analytics, there's external data products, and there's AI applications. And those feel like three maybe distinct things. I will bet that the lines between those will blur in the future. And I think AI will be the thing that blurs it. So like AI BI, like AI for BI, right? Like what will BI look like in 2-3 years? My bet is BI is not going to look the same it looks today. Like that's going to be the first area that will get disrupted in my mind. If you look at like Snowflake Cortex, right? So like Snowflake Cortex basically, in theory, allows any person in the organization to directly access data and ask any question about the data, right? Obviously, Databricks has a,
Genie, right? They're all they're smaller companies and bigger. All they're doing,
exactly. There's dozens of them, right? Like, which one will win? Anyone's guess, right? However, how different is that from Barr asking to get a delivery of 10 cans of soda home, from an agent in 5-10 years from now? It might actually be the same technology. It might actually be the same team. It might actually, be with similar technology. If Snowflake and Databricks do their jobs well, it might actually be. Look, I do think there's a little bit of a bifurcation in the market in the sense of like companies are more using Snowflake for analytics and Databricks more for AI. I do also see Bedrock, AWS Bedrock, being used more and more for AI. So in terms of the technology, I do think there's a little bit of a line in the sand being drawn from, tech that's being used for analytics and what's being used for AI and ML. But, Snowflake might be putting up a fight and trying to catch up. And, I'm excited to see how they'll do. But I think that my bet is that distinction that's very clear today will not be as clear in the future. I will say that in all three of those instances, the data and AI estate is still built on, you still need to make sure that the data sources arrive on time. And, if you're getting data from, whatever third party, I don't know, from LinkedIn or from, a credit score company, you need that data to actually arrive on time and be accurate. You need to have the right transformation. You need to have, your DBT job completed. You need to have your Airflow job completed. You need to, make sure that the code change in your DBT model didn't like mess something up downstream. Right? That foundation, I think, becomes even more critical because it's powering these agents. I'll give you an example. Intuit has an AI-based financial advisor. So basically, like, takes information about your background. It's sort of tax season, right? Soon, so it's like top of mind for me. So a financial advisor takes information about your background, where you live, et cetera, and sort of makes tax recommendations. That financial AI agent cannot make sound recommendations. Again, if it's not using the right data, if it's not built on reliable pipelines, if the model outputs are not observed, like there's a lot of things that can go wrong. I don't want to sort of minimize an AI application is just like, just like spin up an agent, have like a quick prompt and you're done, right? Like, no, it's actually built on a whole foundation of very important pipelines that you need to make sure are running, and you need to make sure that the agent is working appropriately, et cetera. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, as long as like AI was, some experiment that we were doing, we could sort of like treat it as an experiment. But like the lab is closed. We're not.
Yeah, no, this is happening. This is happening now.
Exactly.
All right. Look, we're already almost 40 minutes in. Like, I knew this was like, we have so much. We can keep talking for hours and hours. Looking forward to the next conference that we're at. We can keep having this conversation, but let's kick it off with our lightning round.
Okay.
So we got 4 questions. You're ready. I'm going to kick it off. Number 1, we talk about AI, but now part of AI is all this agent stuff. So agents and agentic architecture are the big topics now. So AI observability, and I'm going to throw this now, agentic observability. Is this all the same thing, or is this a separate thing, or?
Good question. So I think I'm going to make a distinction between 3 different customer pain points. Okay.
Customers.
Yes, we are going. I firmly believe in starting with the customer pain. So let's talk about 3 problems that customers have today. The first problem, which I mentioned before, is they are under pressure to use AI everywhere, right? To make their teams more productive, not to replace data and AI teams, but to make them more productive and more efficient, right? Okay, in order to do that, the things that they've been doing now, we need to use AI to make them better, faster, stronger, okay? specifically at Monte Carlo, we build something that's called observability agents. What an observability agent does, we have a monitoring agent, we have a troubleshooting agent that we're releasing shortly. The monitoring agent, guess what it does? Helps the data and AI team know what to monitor. The troubleshooting agent, what does it do? Helps the data and AI team know what was the root cause. So, what many years ago, I worked as sort of a data leader. When there was a data problem, I would be like, oh, what could be the issue? Let me come up with 3 to 5 hypotheses. Start maybe the problem with is the ETL. Maybe the problem with you start going through all these hypotheses for what maybe the data source that I'm relying on just, they changed the API and whatever, the data didn't deliver. Okay. And then you start researching those hypotheses. It could take you weeks to find out what the root cause. What if you could actually have an LLM do the research for you? So come up with hypothesis and run the research for you, and then do it recursively on all the tables that you have in Snowflake or whatever it is. And so you could actually have 100 agents run at the same, or 100 LLMs run at the same, in under 1 minute, and research all these hypotheses together. So it's basically like a supercharged data analyst, data steward, right? If you could sort of imagine the visual there, right? So that's the first customer pain point, which is how do we use agents to make data and AI teams more productive? I gave 2 examples. There are many other examples, and I'm pretty sure that the right way for any data and AI team is to look at everything that they're doing and figuring out how do we make that better, bigger, stronger with AI. That's one customer pain point. The second customer pain point is their data is not AI ready. Whatever that means, right? Whatever that means different thing to different people. But not knowing where your data is, not having your data classified, not having your data governed, not having your data be reliable, secure, etc. That's a second problem that folks have. And by the way, what's old is new again, because that's been a problem for a while. So, nothing new there, but that's a real customer pain point. And then the third customer pain point that folks have is they actually need observability for their AI solutions. And that means everything that goes into building an AI application, including your agent, your prompt, your vector database, et cetera. Those are 3 distinct problems, all real problems that customers have, and all things that I think people are addressing these days.
Nice. So it's a pretty comprehensive approach. All right. So I think this ties a little bit into our next question here. So second lightning round question. So people talk about bias in AI models, right? And sometimes that can be literally because of the LLM. Sometimes it's because of the data. Do you see bias as in the scope of AI observability?
Great question. Yes, I do think that it is in the scope, in the broad sense. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
All right. Next question. So this is dear to me because this is my world of semantics and knowledge. So as we shift to a data and AI observability, do you see semantics need to play a role in the observability? Are we going to be observing this semantic kind of data quality or meaning and stuff of how things may be different?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, I do think what people are doing now is sort of, there's sort of a semantic layer that helps teams organize their data and understand how to use their data, which is core to building great AI applications. It's very hard to actually have, AI for BI when you don't actually understand the data and don't have a semantic layer for it. In fact, that's one of the core barriers to building with AI. And so I do think I am seeing teams struggle with that. And I am seeing teams having a need, and I would classify that in the second bucket when I said sort of, having
AI ready.
Exactly. Under AI ready, having a strong semantic layer is a real problem today for teams.
Yeah.
Tim, final question.
All right, final question. So AI tooling is evolving very fast, the AI space. You mentioned the LLMs and all that's happening there. So a little bit of a spicier question here. Is AI observability really going to be, kind of a mix of technology along with tools and approach, or is it really just an approach because things are going to evolve too fast?
Great question. I think like all things, it's going to be a combination of an approach and sort of solutions and technology. I mean, look, I think approaches are great and frameworks and methodologies are very critical. And we spend a lot of time working on that as data teams because we don't have, we don't have the best practices that engineering and security have from like SecOps and engineering and et cetera. Like data and AI teams are behind in that sense, and we need to catch up. So 100%, I do think the best practices, frameworks matter a lot. Yes, Juan.
No, actually, no, you said this. So this whole thing started off saying it's data and AI, so really not one or the other. And I always argued, I'm like, wait, the data teams and industry is immature in the sense because we lack these methodologies. And I have to say that and now AI comes in and makes it even more harder. But one can argue is like, hey, it's actually great that we didn't spend so much time doing so much of these methodologies and frameworks and all that stuff, because we have to go revamp and change this for this AI world now. And there's a combination of both data and AI that is probably, it's a good thing that we've kind of been at hoc up so now, because now we can actually figure out how to go do not just frameworks to make sure that our data is AI ready, but actually figure out how to go use AI in order to figure out that our data to create AI ready data. So it's like this combination.
That's such a kind perspective, Juan, that you're like, it's okay that you don't have governance. Luckily, your golf swing is not bad yet.
Well, my whole point is that now it's the time.
Yeah.
Now it's the time.
Here's how I view it. I think everything we've done to date is important. Like it's critical. It's not going away, right? It's that second category, AI ready. Like, dude, you cannot get away without doing that. Like you're not, you just can't. I'm so sorry. Like, I hate to break it to you. If anyone thinks they can skip it, they can't. They can't. However, the stakes are higher. Yeah, matters more. There's more stuff to do right now. And so maybe, the good news here is like, whatever we're working on matters a lot more right now.
Barr, you're awesome. I love this conversation. All right, Tim, takeaway time. Take us away with takeaways.
All right. Woo! Well, we started off with what is AI observability? And I think you started off with the honest no BS right at the beginning. It's not AI observability. It's data and AI observability, because it's all integrated together. And, as you mentioned a little later in the episode, right, the companies that are making the most of their AI investments are integrating it into their first party and proprietary knowledge and data, right? And that's what's really allowing them to do amazing things. Everything in data is now evolving. The teams, the infrastructure, everything, it's becoming data and AI. Governance, it's data and AI. And observability is something that in general, historically speaking, has been a little bit behind kind of the bleeding edge, right? You look at first people started building applications, then New Relic came along, then Datadog came along, right? And so same thing here with AI, just the cycle time is faster and faster, right? So we got to make sure we're doing the right stuff, that we're becoming AI ready, which was a theme that came up several times. When you talked about the example of the pizza, the cheese falling off the pizza, put super glue on it, organic super glue. Obviously, that's something that we have to control for, and we have to make sure it doesn't happen. Which got us a little bit into a debate about observability versus guardrails versus governance. And so we started to kind of define some of these different pieces, but really they're all connected. And I think what's really important is that you zoomed us out, Barr, and you really had us kind of look at hey, what are the customer problems, right? What are we trying to solve here? Let's not get too obsessed about specific definitions or specific technologies. There are 4 core causes of issues: model response, problems with data sources, code changes, and system failures. And it all boils up to, we're trying to solve these bigger problems around data and AI. So lots more, but Juan, what were your big takeaways?
All right. So we started talking also about the ops when it happens in the data world and the ML and AI world. So first of all, I like how we said, right now we're in this whole phase of we should democratize AI. Everyone can do things with AI. I'm like, wait, haven't we heard this story before when it comes to the data world, right? I mean, democratize data. But later on, we're actually adding now all the things that we should have been doing from the beginning. So data engineers are building side by side with software engineering teams. That's something that you're observing more. But let's also remind ourselves, what's driving the customer, right? First of all, there's a risk to not thinking about AI. There's so much tremendous pressure to deliver around AI. You said your survey you put out there, 100% of leaders surveyed said they're doing something with AI, but only 1 out of 3 said that they're ready. So we need to go build with AI. We need to AIify our operations. And so that's one of the critical kind of points right now. The core question is how do we get our data AI ready and stuff? this is truly when it comes back to foundations. You need to know what data you have, how it's being used. Again, foundations. Point solutions don't make sense anymore. We are seeing need more consolidation. So we talk about like observability for structured data and unstructured data. It's like, look, at the end of the day, unstructured is just a technical asset. That's not the customer pain point, which is a reminder we need to be focusing on what the customer problem is. A strong approach is a holistic one that starts with the customer's problem. And so if you go back to first principles, you need reliable systems, and applications should be what guide us. And think about kind of this holistic approach for teams. If you look at it like the observability space, it has always followed engineering. Tools like Relic and Datadog, like they took a while. And even today, like even teams, like what are the right goals and OKRs? Like we are figuring this out right now. And that future model is one where you're building software. The data engineering teams are building side by side with software engineering, which is doing stuff with AI and so forth. But hey, don't forget, data pipelines are still not going to go anywhere, which is why we need to be able to kind of focus on foundations. And I like how this like AI is really blurring the lines between data and analytics. And at the end of the day, again, foundations are even more critical than ever.
Oh, you guys were listening. I'm impressed.
All right. All right. To wrap up, back to you quickly. What's your advice? Who should invite next? What resources do you follow?
My advice is to not listen to advice. Listen to your customers and to the data, but not to advice. Not even for me.
Boom.
Next guest. I would Mike Weiss from NASDAQ, amazing data leader. Been building amazing data products. I think there's a lot to learn from him. And what was the last question?
What resources do you follow?
What resources do I follow? I like to. Well, it's a good question. I feel like I sort of. Change between sort of podcasts and newsletters to LinkedIn and various sort of blogs. I would follow. You know what? I'm going to take a contrarian take. I'm going to say, other than y'all's podcast, I'm going to say go to in-person conferences. So that's what you should follow. There's
anyone in particular?
I think it's back. There's Snowflake and Databricks this summer. First 2 weeks of June. Be there or be square.
Okay. Meet people in person. Have live conversations.
Quick one. Right. Snowflake, Databricks, Big Data London. That we always see, right? There's
Gartner.
like the data council one happening. All the Gartner ones.
Google Next.
Google Next.
Yep.
We go to DGIQ and Enterprise Data World. All right. That's plenty enough. That keeps your calendar busy now.
Exactly.
Perfect. Choose one. Barr, thank you so much. You're fantastic. I love having this honest, no BS conversation with you.
It was so fun. Thanks for having me.